So, hi Alex, how are you?
Hey, good. I'm doing good. How are you?
Good, good. How is everything going with the pandemic and kind of having to stay in and be safe? How's that going for you?
Going good. I mean, it's bizarre, like I'm sure it is for everybody. On the personal side, I kept getting sick throughout all of this, so I was pretty sure that I had it. Um, and then I don't know what it's like in Australia right now, but it was really hard to get a test out here, and I actually couldn't get one
Mhm.
through my healthcare provider. I found some sneaky like drive-through one. Got tested, turned out negative. So the good news is I'm not infected. The bad news is I have no idea why I got sick like three times.
Yeah, that's kind of crazy. Well, I guess it sort of is a little bit. Well, you're kind of getting out of the winter, really, but it's Los Angeles because you're based there, right? So
Right.
it's always pretty warm. So it's not
Yeah,
really
it's never too bad.
flu season,
But
but different.
I guess it's like flu season mixes in, so everybody's got something, but they can't tell. And
Mhm.
then everybody I'm talking to is having this weird fatigue thing where just people are generally low in energy and just finding struggle to get motivated to do stuff, which is I think pretty fascinating and kind of there must be some sort of explainable psychological effect that this is having on all of us without our knowing exactly why.
Definitely. No, I'm sure. I think we're kind of all a little bit more paranoid about everything and kind of just changing our daily routine so much. But I think there's positives and negatives. I think it's good if you're able to sort of find ways to implement little things to make your life better in your daily life. That's good. But if you're constantly scared, that's just not good for anyone.
Right.
Yeah. But yeah, so did you grow up in Los Angeles? Where are you from? What kind of got you to be where you are now?
I'm from San Diego originally.
So,
I grew up as a devout classical musician. So my journey here is pretty bizarre. I was a French horn player growing up. I was obsessed with classical music and obsessed with being a professional French horn player. I ended up uh, wanting to go to classical music college. So I went to a school in New York called Juilliard, and I studied there for 4 years as a French horn major, which is uh, an awful degree to have if you don't plan on playing the French horn. But I fell in love. I had always been in love with movie music, and I fell deeper in love with it in college. And so I just decided, if this French horn thing doesn't work out, might as well move out to LA and sort of see if I can hack it in the film music world. And I actually did a semester. I think I did a full year actually at USC for my master's over
that's
at Thornton in
awesome.
music school. Yeah, fight on. And then I don't know exactly how it works, but I just didn't go my second year and I never told anybody and nobody from the school reached out. So like I don't know what my status is, but like I mean this is years ago now, but like I just stopped going and it was all right.
Student, maybe. Who knows?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So you've had a lot of experience with music then, especially coming from that classical background. That's really amazing that you're in Juilliard in New York and now you're on the other coast. That's awesome. I had no idea that you studied French horn, so you'll have to. Well, do you put it on any songs that have been released lately? Do you play?
Interestingly enough, I got it repaired about a year ago. I hadn't played. I mean, I just shoved it in the case and kept it locked away for years. But I got it repaired, and I want to say this song I have coming out on Friday is the first like primary single where it's featured. It's like in the whole outro is just like this collage of a whole bunch of French horns playing.
Oh, cool. So
So
that's
yeah,
Repairable. That's out tomorrow.
yeah,
Awesome. I'm so excited.
yeah. I'm really pumped.
Oh, can't wait to hear that. Okay, sweet. So how was that making that? Did you do that before all of this sort of happened and were you able to well, do you have a studio at your house, it seems like? Did you
I'm actually in this empty building. I don't live far from here, but I most producers kind of split the ticket on whether they like working in like a bedroom studio situation versus like going to work, going to the office. And I've always really liked getting out of my apartment. But I just have this like little private parking back here, so I haven't seen a soul for almost like a month and a half now. But I just scoot over here in the morning and spend. I mean, I probably spend most of my life in this studio room, and then go home to sleep and shower, and then repeat the cycle. So yeah.
Yeah, definitely. How did that go for you? Because you were focusing a lot on music throughout your life, but did you have a point when producing became what really was your sort of your outcome and your goal, and when did that sort of come into play?
It actually occurs to me, I didn't ask, I don't know if I asked you too much about like what your side of this is, because I could probably steer this in a pretty interesting direction
Oh,
from
go for
the
it. Take it away.
what's the department? It's the contemporary, you guys have, it's called, I can't remember the name of your school.
Thornton School of Music.
Oh, are you in like the pop music program?
I'm in music industry, so I'm doing their like music business major.
Okay, awesome. Yeah. So this is something I, I try and talk to music students as often as I can, because I have a really weird story that isn't really that trackable. But what the psychological life of it all was just sort of stumbling around in Los Angeles, trying a lot of really bizarre things that I was never interested in previously, and then discovered like I had a huge passion for. And electronic music was the first giant bridge that I crossed that I didn't ever consider before. I mean, I literally only knew classical music all the way until I graduated my undergrad. So I was like a real strict nerd. And I met my old partner from Mako. His name's Logan in LA. And he was like, "Do you like electronic music?" And I hadn't heard anything. And so he took me to EDC in Vegas, the big like electronic festival, and I fell in love with it. I mean, I think for all of us, like we are, I think it's something you're born with. You just have an affinity for certain styles of music that you won't know until you discover it.
Mhm.
But the second I heard that, I was like, oh, that's a thing I love. And I didn't have to think about it, but I just didn't know it existed. So it was like opening the veil on something that I could just dive into. And one of the foolish sort of mishaps that actually ended up being a nice thing was that I thought it sounded easy to make. And so I thought, oh shit, when you go from like analyzing Mahler symphonies to then analyzing whatever, a Swedish House Mafia record, it's not dense in the normal sorts of like tenets of a composition, but it's really sophisticated in a lot of other ways that I didn't have any understanding of at the time. So I really love that challenge of learning how to produce music, and it suited my personality type and my kind of like creative juice in a way that French horn never did. So I never really thought I want to be a producer one day. And if you had told college Alex I'd be making electronic music, I would think, what went wrong? Like that sounds awful. But over
Amazing.
time, what's that?
It's amazing though, so it's really great that it led you down that pathway.
I feel incredibly lucky, but I couldn't have planned this out. And I think that's the thing I always talk about whenever I speak with conservatory students, is that your your focus is just like only so many feet in front of you.
Mhm.
Uh, and there's so many amazing career paths out there that are in the umbrella of music that you might love so much more than you could ever imagine, but you won't know until you kind of stumble around in the fog and start to get a feeler for what you dig and what you don't like as much. And I've kind of used that as my North Star always, to have a vague plan. Like I'd love to be this kind of person in 10 years, just to have somewhere to wander towards. But anytime I get distracted by something along the way that feels interesting, I'll always spend a little time on it just to see what it's like. And I just keep weaving off into these strange pockets to the point where I kind of have like 5 or 6 different jobs that I do in music to make a living, and almost all of them were things that were not my original game plan.
Mhm. No, which is great. I think that that helps kind of keep things interesting and alive, and you always have another project you can go to, and I'm sure they can kind of go hand in hand as well, because there's so many ways that creativity can lead into different areas and combine too. So
Yeah,
that's
feel free to cut me off if I'm babbling, but like
no, no,
this is
no,
probably like
no.
one
Mhm.
area where I feel the most passionate, because not only do they allow you an opportunity into certain aspects of making a living that aren't normally going to be like if when I moved to LA, I wanted to be a film composer. So if my track of mine was like, I'm only going to do things that lead in film scoring, it just narrows down the scope of opportunities to such a fine point. And at every juncture, it's hyper competitive. There's so many people that want to join these fields, and by sort of widening my expanse, I become versatile in a way where I can have value to people for other reasons. So my work in electronic music suddenly made me really valuable to film composers because I had some sort of experience in a field that they didn't, and I wouldn't have had if I only stuck to classical contemporary film scoring. And so you get that, which is great. And my big breaks came doing bizarre side quests like writing songs for DJs that I never really like was into at first. And then in the longer term, you become this Swiss Army knife of a creative force where you can kind of borrow from everything you've learned to inform whatever your current pursuit is. And so with Mako, it's really about taking like all the different things I do and just kind of colliding them into this piece. And then to make a living, I'll just split off and I'll help write music for video games, or I'll write songs for other artists, or I'll score a TV show and stuff like that. So it's just like this nice bubbling thing that I couldn't have predicted, but I'm really excited that I kind of went about everything the way that I did.
Yeah, that's amazing. That's really, really cool. And I think that's the best way to really be successful in this industry, is to be able to do all those things, and you're doing them all very well. So that's
Well,
awesome.
that's the frustrating part, is that you turn into this like jack of all trades, master of none thing. And I talked to my colleagues about this, where like, I think if everything pans out great, I'll really sort of come into my full abilities in like my 40s or whatever, because it takes so long to master any one thing as it is. And by spreading out, you can only spend so many hours in the day on anything. So you either form an amazing team around you that can sort of pick up, that are specialists that can pick up where you left off, or you just get good enough at everything where it can all sort of fuse together. So I've always hoped that by doing it the way that I do it, I'm maybe not coming in with like such a big smash in my younger years, but by the time I'm sort of been around for a bit, I'll kind of be a tank of a creative person. I don't know. We'll see how it goes.
Yeah, yeah. So what did you sort of envision when Mako was coming together, and what really kind of made your project very unique from like other EDM, other DJ producers? And you also sing and write. So like you said, you do it pretty much everything, which is amazing. But what would you say at its time of formation really sort of struck you as being your own sort of unique sound?
Yeah, it certainly didn't start the way it turned out. And the whole reason I started it, to be honest, was that I thought if I started a DJ project, it would get me an ability to score films faster. Because I moved to LA and I saw the sort of track route for a composer is like you be somebody's assistant for 10 years, barely write any music. Maybe after you've spent enough years with them, they'll give you like the scraps of some whatever kind of cues in a film, and then you can start to build a reel and go on from there. But it looked like a painful road to go, like being at somebody else's service for that long. And at the time, like, I saw all these cool artists get film scoring gigs. It was like Trent Reznor was doing Social Network, and Daft Punk was doing Tron, and like M83 was doing Oblivion. And it was like this cool, exciting period where like artists were essentially skipping the line and getting to score film based on the credibility that they had. So that was like my master plan, which is just why I started it. But to be honest, I didn't have anything to offer when I got started. Like, I wasn't unique. I learned by copying my favorite artists, just like I think most people do and most people should. At the time, I was in love with all these Swedish DJs like Avicii and Alesso and Swedish House Mafia. And so I just basically did my best copying job. And then, you got to learn the craft too, and just figure out what the hell you're doing on the computer. And it was only over time. I think it takes a long time for any artist to really find their voice. I think it's such a natural cycle. Like the first 5+ years are just copying people and learning how to even do the thing. And then there's an important moment that many artists either take or ignore, where they get to that level of competency. And then you take the leap off the bridge into, now let's make something that's unique. And it takes a lot of courage to do that. And it's pretty easy for, I think, most people to spot the artists that do that and the ones that don't. And I only feel like I really got to this point with this new record I'm making. And when I started it, maybe a year and a half ago, I really decided, like, okay, I've got a pretty bizarre collection of influences, like classical music, film scoring, indie rock, and electronic music, and songwriting, pop stuff. So not a lot of people have that CV. So why don't I now take this leap of my own and just combine all that shit? And so that's kind of like where that's led me with this album.
Sweet. Okay,
Yeah.
cool. So yeah, so you have a lot of influences then. Very cool. Is there someone that you'd really like to collaborate with that's you've been kind of keeping in the back of your mind as someone that would be a top collaborator?
Yeah, there's one dude. When I was in college, the reason I decided I wanted to write music was because this animated movie called How to Train Your Dragon came out.
Mhm.
And I thought the score was so fucking beautiful that it was like, wow, I want to make something that makes me feel the way that does.
Mhm.
And the composer's name is John Powell. And I mean, he's an A-list film composer. He's gone on to do so many huge movies, and he does maybe like one to two movies a year, mostly animated films. And so my little secret plan is that I want to get enough acclaim writing the credits song for movies that I can sort of buy my way into a room with him on whatever project he's working on and like write a
Mhm.
song for a movie he scored. Uh,
Yeah,
but
very cool.
that's like probably like the dream collab, I think.
Yeah, that's a really good one, and that definitely ties in that area of film composing. So that would be amazing. Very, very fun. Did you have a favorite song to record? Because I know recently you had Chameleon out, and you even did a project where you allowed fans to spend in pretty much, I guess, producers and fans to send in their own remixes. Is that kind of a way that you've been connecting with your artists? Have you ever done that before? Sounds like a pretty cool
Um,
idea.
do you mean like when I had people remix Chameleon and sort of send it in?
Mhm.
Yeah, I've done things like that in the past. I really like doing stuff like that. That's not so much part of the creative process for me as it is like a really fun way to interact with people that listen and produce. And a lot of most people's that are producers fan base is made up of other producers as well. But yeah, I really enjoyed recording Chameleon. None of my music gets made very easily, unfortunately. So like when you asked me originally if Parable was something I had started before or after the COVID crisis, uh, it's something I started probably 2018. Like most music that you hear from me has been in development in some form for like years rather than weeks or months. Um, and I'm doing after I finish this album, I'm gonna do a lot of tinkering under the hood and figure out if that's an important part of the process or if there's ways to circumnavigate that so it doesn't take me quite so long to work on music. But uh, you know, 5% of my time on a song is spent doing the fun creative stuff, and like 95% is spent on just mixing the kick drum to match with the snare drum and stuff. It's the stuff I don't like doing as much. So like the joy you get in a song is so bizarre because it's very front loaded, where you get really excited when you first invent the idea and then you spend forever just refining it and forgetting what it was to write it in the first place. And then I've discovered in my career that when I moved my live show from a DJ project to a band, there's a new falling in love process with a song when, like, for example, when I have a tour coming up, I'll get to perform Chameleon and like perform that for an audience. And that's a whole new saga of like, oh my God, I love this again. Hearing people sing it and actually like performing the thing. Because when you're in a studio, it really doesn't look like music most of the time. It just looks like a computer game. Recording is something that happens in little fragments. I'll record a couple lines and then fix it and stuff like that. So like the organic experience of playing music is actually ironically not that common.
What software do you use to record?
So I'm on Apple Macs and stuff, and I use Logic X for everything.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
And what festivals would you like to perform at, or that you miss performing at?
I mean, Lollapalooza was one of my favorite shows I've ever played, and I would love to get back there one day. I got a chance to play Coachella. I think it was 2014 or so. It would be really sweet to get back as well to that one because I played that as a DJ, and it would be really nice to like have proven myself as a band so many years later to be reinvited in a totally different context.
Mhm.
There's one that I've never been to that everybody raves about, which is Glastonbury in the
Mhm.
UK. And I hear that that
Yes.
festival is like the king of festivals. So I think it'd be really neat just to get out there to see what it's like.
Yeah, you'd have to be ready for the rain and wear your wellies
I
and
hear
everything. Yeah, yeah, you'd have to be ready for that one. That
that's
would be
right.
cool. That'd be cool.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, is there anything else we should kind of look out for coming out? Because I know that tomorrow, May 8th, 2020 is Parable. Any projects you're kind of doing or any way that we should check that out on
I would
streaming
say, yeah,
services?
just keep an eye on the socials because I'm
Okay.
wrapping up the album, and this has been a really deep and amazingly rewarding creative experience for me. And this is, I just really like this record of music. So I'm trying to finish it all this summer, by the middle of this summer, and then it'll take a month or two to kind of like get it through the system to finish all the art and everything like that to get it released. So I think like fall, keep an eye out for the album. Um, we were supposed to tour with Lindsey Sterling this summer, but obviously everything's getting super shifted. So I don't have any like formal updates, but like keep an eye for shows. We're definitely going to still do that tour. And then I have one other project that is so damn cool that I'm not allowed to talk about yet, but it involves film scoring. So I've been working on something for like a year and a half now that is hopefully I'll be able to announce it over the next year that I'm just like really pumped to share with people.
Sweet. Okay,
Yeah.
cool. Very exciting. So we'll look out for that. Yeah, thank you. Thank you for taking the time to
Yeah,
do
thanks
this.
for
I
having
really,
me.
I really appreciate it.